It began on a rain-heavy Sunday evening, the kind that soaks through the bones of a small town and exposes every secret trembling beneath its surface. In a place where everyone pretended to know everything, there existed a forbidden silence, a tension whispered behind stained glass windows and buried beneath hymns meant to purify the soul. But what happens when the heart refuses to obey the rules it recites? What happens when love reaches into a space where it was never meant to grow, twisting itself into a dangerous, irresistible pull that no prayer seems strong enough to break? And what if the pastor's daughter, perfect, disciplined, obedient, was the very person destiny chose to challenge all the laws written around her? A question that no one dared to ask out loud, until the night her eyes met his, and everything shifted in ways no one saw coming, flowing straight into the shadows of a story people would die to hide, and others would risk everything to uncover. This is a dramatic content for awareness and discussion only. Church bells echoed across Willow Creek, a quiet town in the American South, where faith was not just a belief. It was a lifestyle, a law, a culture, a boundary you simply did not cross unless you wanted to be swallowed by gossip and judgment. And in this world lived Ariana Wells, the 24-year-old daughter of Pastor John Wells, a respected, strict, and deeply conservative leader of Grace Chapel Ministries. Ariana was known for her calm presence, her angelic voice, her disciplined upbringing, and a beauty whispered about but never openly acknowledged inside church walls. She was the pride of the congregation, and the one girl no one imagined would ever question her destiny. But destinies bend when hearts awaken. This awakening began with Elias Carter, 25, a church choir boy, by nickname, though he was no child. Elias was the lead tenor, a dedicated choir member since his teens, a man with a soft gaze, a troubled past, and a voice that cracked open emotions people didn't know they were hiding. His melodies were a healing place for broken spirits. But behind that gentle exterior lived a fire, an intensity that pushed against the quiet life he had been forced into. And Ariana noticed that fire long before she admitted it, even to herself. Their story did not start with a confession, a touch, or even a conversation. It started with a glance during a Sunday rehearsal in 2022, a glance that should have lasted half a second but stretched into something longer, heavier, magnetic. Ariana had been arranging sheet music on the podium when Elias stepped forward to test a microphone. Their eyes locked. She blinked first, startled. He didn't. The air in the sanctuary trembled with the kind of tension that had no name, yet. Ariana tried to ignore it, tried to focus on the notes in her hands, but the ink blurred. She told herself it was nothing, just a flicker, just a coincidence. But deep down, something inside her whispered that a boundary had been crossed in that single moment. She felt it. He felt it. Something forbidden, and dangerously alive. Pastor Wells had always warned Ariana about the world, the temptations, the emotional traps disguised as passion. Yet he never considered that the greatest danger might grow within the walls of his own church. Ariana's life had been carved out for her: perfection, purity, obedience, marriage to a man her father approved. But Elias Carter was not on that approved list. Elias was the type of man whose past had bruises, family debt, a rebellious youth, a reputation for being saved by the church, not born into it. He was talented, passionate, and unpredictable, everything Ariana wasn't supposed to want. Elias noticed her attention that day, but he pretended not to. He focused on his music, yet every note he sang quivered with something unsaid. Every breath in the sanctuary carried a weight neither of them dared to acknowledge. They kept their distance, but the distance burned. Days turned into weeks. Small interactions, passing by each other in the corridor, exchanging polite nods, catching glimpses during midweek rehearsals, began to feel like stolen fragments of something dangerous. Ariana found herself arriving early to rehearsals, though she didn't openly admit why. Elias stayed late, insisting he needed to reorganize music sheets, though he knew it was just an excuse to watch her walk across the church aisle one more time. But forbidden feelings have a way of growing even in silence. Especially in silence. One Thursday evening, while the rest of the choir exited after practice, Ariana dropped her notebook. Pages scattered across the floor. She knelt to gather them, embarrassed, only to find a hand reaching down to help her, Elias's hand. Their fingers brushed. Ariana froze. He froze. Time froze. Her breath hitched, and she pulled back too quickly, almost tripping. Elias steadied her with a gentle grip on her arm, gentle, but warm, too warm. She could feel her heartbeat pounding against her ribs, echoing through her entire body as if struggling to break free from the cage she'd been raised in. He looked at her with a softness that felt like a question. She looked away with a fear that felt like an answer she didn't want to admit. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Anytime," he replied, his voice low and sincere. A simple exchange. But it changed everything. That night, Ariana went home with her mind in chaos. She lay awake in her room, staring at the ceiling, asking herself questions she shouldn't ask. Why did she feel drawn to him? Why did her chest tighten when she thought of him? Why did the world feel different after that touch, bigger, riskier, more unpredictable? Was this temptation, or something more? Meanwhile, Elias walked home beneath the dim streetlights of Willow Creek, struggling with a battle of his own. He knew the rules. He knew Ariana was off limits. Not because she didn't feel something, but because the whole town would turn against him for even imagining it. And the pastor? He would destroy Elias before allowing his daughter anywhere near a man like him. So why couldn't Elias erase the way her eyes looked when their hands touched? Why did he hear her voice in his head? The forbidden pull between them grew stronger, heavier, and more undeniable with each day that passed. And yet, neither of them acted on it, not yet. Because acting on it meant consequences neither were ready to face. But life rarely waits for readiness. Especially when hearts begin to beat in rhythm with a desire that refuses to be silenced. And then came the night everything took a turn, a church event that would force Ariana and Elias into a moment that neither could avoid, a moment that would change the trajectory of their lives forever. Because sometimes destiny doesn't knock. It breaks the door open and leaves you standing in the wreckage, wondering whether it was fate or a mistake, or both. And as Ariana walked into the candlelit sanctuary that night, unaware of what was about to unfold, the shadows stretched long behind her, as if warning her that something irreversible had already begun. If this story has touched you so far, kindly comment, "I feel the tension," share this story with those who need to hear it, subscribe to Taboo Romance Stories TVC and follow us for more emotional, chilling, and forbidden stories. As Ariana stepped deeper into the sanctuary, heart racing, the air around her shifted in a way she couldn't understand. Was it destiny pulling her forward, or danger whispering her name? The candles flickered along the sanctuary walls as Ariana stepped inside, their soft golden light casting trembling shadows that seemed to dance with secrets. The air was thick with incense, warm, heavy, almost suffocating, like it carried the weight of every unspoken thought lingering between her and Elias. The church had hosted a late-night prayer vigil, and most of the congregation had already left, but Ariana stayed behind to help clean up, unaware that fate had arranged something far more dangerous than tidying hymnals and extinguishing candles. She didn't know Elias was still there. She didn't know he had been lingering in the back, gathering discarded sheet music, or maybe, in truth, gathering courage. And she definitely didn't know that tonight, their paths would collide in a way neither could undo. As she moved slowly down the aisle, her fingertips lightly brushing the wooden pews, she found herself humming a soft tune, one Elias often sang during rehearsals. She stopped immediately, startled by her own subconscious betrayal. Why was he creeping into her thoughts this way? Why couldn't she silence the echo of his voice that clung to her mind like a forbidden melody? She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, hoping to steady herself. But then she heard it, a faint sound behind her. A footstep. A shift of air. She turned abruptly, her breath catching in her throat. Elias stood a few rows away, holding a stack of choir sheets, his eyes reflecting the candlelight, and something else. Something raw. "Ariana, I didn't mean to startle you," he said softly. She swallowed hard. "I thought everyone had left. I stayed behind," he replied, stepping slightly closer. "I needed to finish some things." But Ariana sensed that things wasn't just about paper or music. There was a heaviness in his voice, a hesitance mixed with longing, that mirrored the turmoil inside her. And as their eyes met, the silence between them grew thick, electric, almost dangerous. A gust of wind slipped through the cracked window above them, dimming several candles and plunging half the room into deeper shadows. Elias took another step forward, the soft echo of his shoes on the marble floor syncing with the pounding in Ariana's chest. She could feel the pull, magnetic, irresistible, terrifying. This wasn't a crush. This wasn't harmless admiration. This was wanting, the kind that rewrites the rules you were raised with and dares you to question everything you believed was unbreakable. "We keep doing this," Ariana whispered, her voice trembling. "Doing what?" Elias asked, though he knew exactly what she meant. This thing," she replied, gesturing helplessly between them. "These moments. These looks. I don't know how to make sense of it." "You don't have to," he said gently. "Some things aren't meant to be understood. They're just felt." His words hit her like a confession. She stepped back instinctively, but her body felt rooted to the spot. Every lesson her father ever taught her screamed that this was wrong, dangerous, sinful even. But her heart refused to listen. It surged toward Elias like it recognized him from another life. "I shouldn't be here alone with you," she said, though she didn't move. "Then tell me to leave," he replied, voice low. "If that's what you really want." But the truth was carved into the silence. Ariana didn't tell him to leave. She couldn't. And Elias took her silence as the answer it truly was. He set the sheet music down on a pew and stepped closer, slowly, carefully, like approaching a fragile flame he was terrified of extinguishing. Ariana's breathing quickened, her pulse fluttering wildly. Their faces were inches apart now, and she felt the warmth of him, the quiet intensity radiating off his skin, the storm behind his eyes that mirrored the storm inside her. "Elias, this can ruin everything," she whispered. "Or it can save something we didn't even know was dying," he murmured. Her breath caught. The sanctuary around them felt alive, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. As the thunder rolled outside, Ariana glanced upward, unsure if she was looking for divine intervention or permission. But all she saw were flickering candles casting trembling light across Elias's face. And in that moment, she realized something. He wasn't temptation. He wasn't danger. He was the first person who truly saw her, not as the pastor's perfect daughter, not as the symbol of purity, but as a woman with desires, questions, emotions, fears, and a heartbeat that had its own voice. Elias reached up slowly, his fingers hovering near her cheek but not touching. "Ariana," he whispered her name like a prayer, "just tell me what you feel." She trembled. "I don't know what this is." "Yes, you do." She looked into his eyes, those steady, searching eyes that seemed to unravel every wall she had ever built, and suddenly the truth erupted out of her before she could stop it. "I'm scared." Elias's expression softened. "So am I." And that truth, shared, naked, trembling, was the most intimate moment either of them had ever experienced. But just as the air thickened between them, just as their bodies leaned instinctively closer, the sanctuary door creaked open from afar. Ariana gasped and stepped back so quickly she nearly stumbled. Elias reached out to steady her again, but she shook her head, panicked, her heart slamming in her chest. Voices. Footsteps. Someone was coming. Her father? A deacon? A church elder? Anyone finding them here, alone, standing too close, breathless, flustered, would ignite a scandal that would burn them alive. "Ariana, wait," Elias whispered urgently. But she was already pulling away, her eyes filled with fear, guilt, longing, and something deeper. Something that terrified her more than sin ever could. The truth that she wanted him, and not even fear could silence it anymore. She slipped out of the side aisle, disappearing into the shadows just as two women from the cleaning committee entered, chatting casually. Elias pretended to reorganize papers, hiding the turmoil shaking through him. His hands trembled. His breath trembled. Everything trembled. But something irreversible had happened. A boundary shattered. A line crossed. And neither of them knew how to go back. Later that night, in her room, Ariana clutched the bedsheets as her mind replayed every second, his voice, his closeness, the way her body reacted, the fear of getting caught, the longing in his eyes. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't deny it anymore. This was no longer a harmless attraction. This was forbidden love beginning to bloom in the shadows, a dark romance that threatened to tear apart everything she knew. And somewhere across town, Elias sat on the edge of his bed, elbows on his knees, head in his hands, asking himself the question he feared most: what happens now? Because he knew, deep down, that Ariana Wells was not a woman you loved quietly. Loving her meant war. Loving her meant consequences. Loving her meant fighting a battle he wasn't sure he could win. But why did he feel as though he'd already lost something by letting her walk away? Why did her absence feel like a weight crushing his chest? Why did her name feel like a sin he was ready to commit again, and again, and again? As the storm raged outside, Ariana reached for her diary, something she hadn't written in for months, and wrote trembling words she couldn't believe came from her own hand. "I think I'm falling for him, and I don't know how to stop." And in that confession lay the seed of everything that would happen next: the secrets, the stolen moments, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the tragedy waiting in the shadows of Grace Chapel. Because where there is forbidden love, there is always a price. If this story has touched you so far, kindly comment, "I feel the fire." Share this story with everyone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Taboo Romance Stories TVC, and follow us for more gripping, emotional, forbidden tales. As Ariana lay awake, heart pounding, she whispered a question she wasn't ready to face. What if the very love she feared was the love she was destined for? And what if destiny had much darker plans for them than either could imagine? The morning sun rose over Willow Creek with a deceptive softness, painting the town in warm gold as if nothing dangerous brewed beneath its calm surface. But inside Ariana Wells' chest, the storm from last night had not passed. She moved through the house like a ghost, silent, distracted, her mind replaying every whisper, every breath, every trembling second with Elias. Her father noticed immediately. Pastor Wells always noticed everything. His gaze lingered on her a little too long during breakfast, his brow tightening with concern or suspicion. Ariana forced a smile she didn't feel, murmured something about being tired, and excused herself. But as she walked away, she felt his stare burning into her back. And she feared, with every step she took, that he could already sense the forbidden fire smoldering inside her. Meanwhile, Elias arrived at the church earlier than usual, though he didn't know why. Was he hoping to see her? Hoping for clarity? Or hoping for something he didn't dare name? Whatever the reason, his heart thudded painfully as he walked through the hallways that now felt charged with a memory he couldn't erase. He paused at the sanctuary door, staring into the flickering candle remnants from last night, the empty air still heavy with the echo of Ariana's trembling breath. He closed his eyes, running a hand through his hair, trying to steady himself, but it was already too late. Once a heart recognizes its desire, it refuses to return to silence. That afternoon, Ariana walked into choir rehearsal with her emotions locked behind a carefully crafted mask. She dared not look at Elias, dared not let her father or anyone else read what had happened between them. But even with her eyes cast downward, she could feel Elias's attention on her, soft, worried, yearning. Every time she raised her gaze, she found him already looking away, pretending to focus on his music sheet, though his fingers trembled slightly each time. The tension between them was almost visible, like threads of lightning sparking across the room. As the choir practiced harmonies, Ariana sensed her father's presence enter the sanctuary. Pastor Wells greeted everyone, but his eyes eventually landed on Elias, and stayed there a little too long. Elias stiffened, feeling the weight of the pastor's inspection. Ariana felt a chill crawl across her spine. Did her father know? Or was she simply projecting her guilt? Pastor Wells approached the podium, adjusting his glasses. "We'll have a busy few weeks ahead," he announced. "And I expect everyone to exhibit discipline, purity, and unwavering dedication." His gaze slid briefly toward Ariana, then to Elias, before settling on the choir as a whole. But that fleeting moment, Ariana felt a dagger of fear slice through her. Because her father didn't speak boldly or loudly when he was suspicious. He spoke quietly, precisely, like a man sharpening a knife. Throughout rehearsal, Ariana's heart pulsed with fear and something dangerously close to longing. And Elias felt it too. Their voices harmonized from opposite ends of the room, but every note felt like a confession, every chord like a step closer to a truth neither could deny. When rehearsal ended, Ariana tried to leave quickly, but Elias reached the door at the same time. They nearly collided. "Ariana," he said softly. She froze. His voice alone unraveled her. We need to talk," he whispered, careful not to draw attention. "We can't," she replied, barely audible. "We can't keep pretending nothing happened." Her breath hitched. "Elias, if my father, if anyone, I don't care about them," he murmured, eyes burning with quiet desperation. "I care about you." She looked at him, and her soul trembled. Because she cared too, more than she was ready to admit. But before she could speak, someone called her name. Ariana, her father? They both snapped apart as Pastor Wells strode toward them, suspicion tightening his features. Ariana's stomach knotted. Elias stepped back, masking his emotions with a polite nod. "Everything all right?" Pastor Wells asked, eyes flicking between them with unsettling precision. "Yes, Father," Ariana replied quickly. "Elias was just thanking me for rearranging the sheet music." Pastor Wells stared at Elias for a long second. "Is that so?" Elias nodded. "Yes, sir." The pastor held his gaze, assessing him like a judge weighing a verdict. Finally, he nodded. "Good. Ariana, I need you to help me with some files in my office." She obeyed, but as she walked past Elias, her heart ached. She could feel his disappointment, his longing, the unspoken words they weren't allowed to speak. But fate doesn't wait for permission. Visual highlight. Evening streetlights flickering on. Later that night, Ariana's phone buzzed under her pillow. A message. From an unknown number. Her breath caught as she opened it. "We need to talk. Just 5 minutes. Behind Grace Hall. Please." Elias, her heart flipped. Was this reckless? Yes. Dangerous? Absolutely. But the ache of not seeing him, not speaking to him, had become unbearable. Forbidden love was like fire. It hurt to touch it, but it hurt even more to stay away. She slipped out quietly, the night air cold against her trembling skin. As she rounded the corner behind Grace Hall, she saw him waiting beneath the dim glow of a street lamp. His silhouette alone made her heartbeat trip. "Ariana," he breathed when he saw her, relief flooding his face. "Thank you for coming. I shouldn't be here," she whispered, stepping closer anyway. "I know," he said, his voice raw. "But I had to see you. I had to know if you feel any of this too." Her breath trembled. "Elias, what are we doing?" He stepped closer, close enough that she felt the warmth of him. "Something neither of us planned, but something neither of us can stop." She looked away, tears stinging her eyes. "If my father finds out, I'm not afraid of him," Elias replied, though his voice betrayed a sliver of fear. "I'm afraid of losing this before it even begins." Their silence pulsed with an ache too powerful to deny. And then, slowly, delicately, fearfully, Elias reached for her hand. His fingers brushed hers. Ariana inhaled sharply, the world spinning around her. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. She didn't. Their fingers intertwined. And in that moment, under the dim street lamp, in the cold night air, with fear on one side and desire on the other, Ariana let herself fall into the truth. "I haven't stopped thinking about you," she confessed. Elias exhaled shakily, his forehead pressing gently against hers. "Ariana, A sudden sound, footsteps, fast approaching. Ariana gasped and yanked her hand away. Elias turned sharply, heart pounding. Someone was coming. Shadows moved at the far end of the alley. "Ariana, go," Elias whispered urgently. "Now. But, go." She fled into the darkness, her pulse roaring in her ears. Elias remained frozen, breath ragged, watching the shadows draw closer. And in that moment, he knew something with terrifying clarity. Someone had been watching them. Someone knew. Someone had seen. If this story has touched you so far, kindly comment, "I feel the danger." Share this story with everyone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Taboo Romance Stories TVC. And follow us for more gripping, emotional, forbidden tales. As Ariana ran home, shaking, heart pounding, she didn't know whether the footsteps behind her belonged to a stranger, or someone far more dangerous. Someone who might be ready to expose everything. But who was watching them? The footsteps behind Elias stopped just beyond the shadows, heavy enough to echo but hidden enough to keep their identity concealed. Elias's breath trembled as he waited, heart pounding against his ribs, ready for whoever had followed them. But after a long, suffocating silence, the footsteps retreated. Slowly. Deliberately. Almost as if the person wanted to be heard, but not seen. Elias exhaled, but the relief was thin and temporary. Someone knew. Someone had seen him with Ariana. And in a town like Willow Creek, secrets didn't stay buried. They festered. They spread. They destroyed. He pressed a trembling hand to his forehead, realizing just how dangerous this love had become. Just how vulnerable Ariana now was. And just how irreversible their fate had already grown. Across town, Ariana slipped back into her bedroom, her fingers shaking uncontrollably. She closed the door quietly, leaning her back against it as tears welled in her eyes. She wasn't crying from fear, not exactly. It was something deeper. Something more complex. A mix of longing, guilt, desire, and the sinking dread of knowing she was losing control of something she'd never meant to start. Her father's footsteps echoed down the hallway moments later, and she quickly wiped her face. He knocked softly. "Ariana, are you awake?" her breath caught. "Yes, father. Are you all right? I thought I heard something." "I'm fine," she lied, voice barely steady. "Just couldn't sleep." Pastor Wells paused on the other side of the door. Ariana waited, her heartbeat thudding painfully. After a long silence, he finally walked away. But Ariana knew it in her bones. He suspected something. Maybe not what, but something. The next day felt heavier than any day before. At church, Ariana avoided everyone's eyes, including Elias's. She couldn't risk looking at him, not when the fear of being discovered clung to her like a shadow. Elias, equally tense, watched her from across the sanctuary with worry etched across his face. She could feel the weight of his gaze like a hand tugging her closer, even though she kept her distance. But buried under her fear was a deeper truth: she missed him. She missed his voice, his warmth, his presence. She missed the version of herself she only discovered when he was near. Yet she also felt the danger pressing against her ribs. The danger of her father's authority. The danger of the church's judgment. The danger of losing everything she had ever known. As the choir gathered for Sunday service, Elias stepped forward for his solo. Ariana forced herself to look up. His voice rose gently at first, then grew powerful, aching, filled with longing. It wasn't just a performance. It was a confession disguised as a hymn. Each note trembled with truth. Each breath carried a message meant only for her. Ariana's eyes filled with tears. And Pastor Wells noticed. His gaze darted from Ariana to Elias, and something darkened in his expression. A shift. A suspicion becoming certainty. A father becoming a guardian of walls she had dared to climb over. After the service, Pastor Wells called Elias aside. Ariana watched from a distance, stomach twisting with dread. She couldn't hear the words, but she saw the way her father stood, rigid, stern, unyielding. She saw the way Elias nodded respectfully, shoulders tense. And she saw the moment her father pointed a firm finger toward the front of the sanctuary, his voice low but sharp, like a blade softened only by the pretense of politeness. Elias didn't argue. But when his eyes briefly flicked toward Ariana afterward, his expression said everything. He knows. Ariana's breath hitched. Panic clawed at her chest. That evening, Pastor Wells confronted her at home. His voice wasn't loud. Loudness wasn't his weapon. Control was. Calm, terrifying control. "Ariana," he said quietly, "is there anything you need to confess?" Her heart slammed. Her throat tightened. She shook her head slowly. "No, Father." He studied her deeply, eyes narrowed with the sharpness of a man who had spent his life discerning sins hidden behind polite smiles. His silence stretched long enough to crush her lungs. But eventually, he nodded once. "Good, because I will not tolerate unrighteousness under my roof." The words landed like shackles. That night, Ariana couldn't sleep. She stared at her ceiling, tears sliding silently down her temples. She felt trapped between two worlds, duty and desire. Obedience and love. The life she was raised to uphold and the life her heart was beginning to crave, even if it came with consequences she couldn't yet imagine. Elias waited for her the next evening. He shouldn't have. He knew the risks. But love doesn't wait for permission, it demands truth. When Ariana finally stepped outside, her breath visible in the cold air, they looked at each other as if months had passed instead of hours. "You're in danger because of me," she whispered, voice shaking. "No," he said, reaching for her hand. "I'm in danger because this town fears anything that doesn't fit inside its perfect little picture. And because your father, don't," she pleaded, cutting him off. But Elias continued gently, "Ariana, he knows something. I saw it in his eyes." She closed her eyes, a tear escaping. "What are we going to do?" He moved closer, his hand brushing her cheek with painful tenderness. "We tell the truth, or we walk away." "Walk away," she echoed, voice cracking. "If staying destroys you," he murmured, "I won't let that happen. Not because of me." His selflessness broke her. She stepped forward, resting her forehead against his chest, her tears dampening his shirt. He wrapped his arms around her, and for the first time in days, she felt safe. Like the world outside didn't exist. Like the rules couldn't touch them. Like love, taboo, forbidden, dangerous, was the only thing that mattered. But safety is fragile. Because as they held each other behind the church, believing the night protected them, a silhouette stood across the courtyard, watching them. Not moving. Not speaking. Not revealing their face. A witness. A threat. A storm waiting to break. And when Ariana finally pulled away from Elias, wiping her tears, she didn't know that the shadow disappearing behind the trees would become the unraveling of everything they loved. Everything they feared. Everything they thought they could hide. Because in Willow Creek, forbidden love didn't stay secret for long. Especially when the person watching had motives far darker than judgment. As Ariana walked home, her fingers trembling, her heart pounding with the weight of love and fear intertwined, she whispered a question the night could not answer. What happens when a forbidden love becomes a weapon in someone else's hands? If this emotional and chilling forbidden story has touched you deeply, kindly comment, "I feel their fate." Share this story with everyone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Taboo Romance Stories TVC for more gripping, heartbreaking, and forbidden tales. Tell us in the comments, when love becomes a secret, who truly pays the price? And what would you do if the truth you feared most was placed in the hands of someone you couldn't trust? Dive into the discussion, share your thoughts, and let your voice be heard. But above all, reflect on this. Sometimes the heart leads us into wars we weren't prepared to fight, battles between duty and desire, and choices that shape the entire course of our lives. Would you choose the safe path, or the path that sets your soul on fire? Comment your truth below. This is Taboo Romance Stories TVC, forbidden romance stories, told like never before. Stay with us for more gripping tales of passion, desire, and heartbreak that defy the rules of love and life.